Deep beneath the shifting sands lies a forgotten network of prehistoric navigation archives. These subterranean libraries, preserved for millennia, are rewriting our entire understanding of early human ingenuity. They reveal that ancient travelers crossed vast, trackless deserts using a hidden technology far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. By the end of this journey, you will understand how a system of celestial calculators and sonic waypoints guided humanity across impossible landscapes. We will uncover how sound could map the desert and why entire chambers were built to capture slivers of starlight. The discovery forces us to ask a profound question about our own history. What does it mean that an entire world of knowledge could be so completely lost to time? Their drill bit suddenly dropped into open air. A team of hydrologists searching for ancient water tables deep in the Sahara had expected to hit solid rock. Instead, they found a void. This accidental puncture revealed a hollow chamber, the first glimpse of a labyrinthine complex carved directly from the bedrock. What they found inside was not a tomb or a simple storage room. It was a library. The walls were covered in vast murals, painted with stunning detail, showing rivers and mountain ranges that have not existed for thousands of years. These were not mere decorations. They were permanent, fixed maps of a world long since erased by the desert, and filling the rooms were thousands of slate tablets, each one inscribed not with words, but with intricate geometric patterns and precise arrangements of dots that experts quickly identified as star charts. This was the Kemenu cache. The discovery proved in one stunning moment that organized knowledge storage on a massive, almost industrial scale existed millennia before the great libraries of the ancient world. But why would a prehistoric society go to such incredible lengths to build an archive in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth? The sheer scale of the place, its meticulous organization, pointed to a purpose far greater than simple record-keeping. This was not a collection of histories or stories. It felt like a manual, a technical manual for navigating a world that was rapidly disappearing. That chance encounter opened a door, and through it, we caught our first real look at a forgotten world of knowledge, a system built not on paper but on stone and memory. The language of the stones defied every known form of writing. There were no letters, no words, no grammatical rules to follow. Just endless fields of dots, intersecting lines, and spirals carved with impossible precision. For the first teams of linguists and codebreakers, it was like trying to read static. The initial assumption was that these were decorative or perhaps ritualistic markings. But the sheer volume and systematic arrangement of the tablets screamed of intentional communication. The real breakthrough arrived not from an archaeologist's trowel, but from an astronomer's star chart. A researcher working late laid a transparent map of the Pleistocene night sky over a high-resolution photograph of one particularly dense dot matrix. The correlation was undeniable. The dots were not random. They were a perfect, if abstract, representation of constellations as they appeared over 15,000 years ago. This was the first cipher broken. The stones were speaking in the language of the cosmos, but the spirals remained a profound mystery. They were everywhere, coiled and intricate. It was only when someone thought to treat them not as images, but as data, that the next layer was peeled back. Using specialized acoustic software, researchers translated the precise dimensions and shapes of these spirals into sound frequencies. Each spiral produced a distinct, pure tone. Some even generated simple harmonic sequences. The archive was not just a visual record, it was a multi-sensory library. Imagine a single slate tablet. You could look at it and see a star map for a specific night, but if you could somehow play its spiral, you would also hear a tone. This combination of sight and sound was the key. This was not a linear story to be read from top to bottom. It was an integrated data storage system, a prehistoric hyperlink. A star map plus a specific sound equaled a specific set of instructions. The realization was humbling. We were not looking at the primitive scratchings of a simple people. We were staring at the sophisticated technical manual of a culture that encoded navigation data across multiple senses, creating a resilient system that could survive even if one part of it was lost to time. Cracking this code meant we could finally begin to listen. These celestial chambers were not just observatories, they were living calendars built into the bedrock. The principle of celestial synchronization meant that the entire archive was actively tracking time itself. Picture one of these vast, dark halls on the morning of a summer solstice. As the sun crests the horizon, a single, brilliant shaft of light pours through a narrow, perfectly angled tube in the ceiling. This beam, no wider than your finger, travels silently across the dusty floor. It does not land randomly. It strikes a series of precisely carved markers, a path of stone dots or a grooved grid that chart its journey throughout this single, critical day. This event was not a spectacle for priests. It was a functional, annual reset for an entire civilization's sense of time. By observing where that sliver of light fell on the grid, a navigator could know with absolute certainty that it was the longest day of the year. This knowledge was a matter of life and death. The desert is a shapeshifter. A route that was safe and dotted with water holes in one season could become a barren, lethal trap just a few months later. Knowing the exact date allowed travelers to consult the star and sound maps for the correct seasonal information. It told them which mountain pass was clear, which dry riverbed might have hidden water, and which constellation would be their guide for that particular journey. This integration of architecture and astronomy was so complete that the building itself became a clock. It was a permanent, unchangeable reference in a world of shifting sands, ensuring that no matter how many generations passed, the people who understood its language would always know precisely where they were in the grand cycle of the year. But the stars and the calendar were only half the system. The archives held a second, even more astonishing secret, one that allowed travelers to navigate the land itself. This is the principle of geomorphic resonance mapping. Scattered among the star charts were tablets of a completely different kind. Their surfaces were not flat. They were carved into intricate, three-dimensional landscapes, miniature mountain ranges, winding canyons, and vast basins. For decades, these were dismissed as beautiful sculptures, artistic representations of a lost world. They were nothing of the sort. When researchers placed these stone models next to modern satellite surveys of the same region, the match was uncanny. These were not just art, they were hyper-accurate topographic maps carved in stone with a surveyor's precision, yet their true function was even more remarkable. During an experiment, a scientist noticed that a low hum from a machine in the room was causing one of the smaller map tablets to vibrate. Intrigued, they began testing. They discovered that each of these stone landscapes had a specific resonant frequency. When you applied the correct tone, the entire tablet would come alive. But it didn't vibrate evenly. Specific areas would hum with intense energy while others remained still. The points of maximum vibration corresponded perfectly with the locations of deep, subterranean aquifers and powerful magnetic anomalies in the real world. The stone was literally singing the secrets of the earth. This changes everything. It means a trained navigator, equipped with nothing more than a simple tuning fork or the power of their own voice, could play this stone map. By finding the tone that made the area around a carved canyon hum, they would know with certainty that a hidden water source lay deep beneath that very canyon in the real desert. They could locate life-saving water and also identify geologically unstable ground, all by listening to the resonant song of a stone. This was a fusion of cartography and geophysics we can barely comprehend today. It was a way of hearing the landscape, of listening to the quiet, constant whispers of the earth to find a path through an otherwise silent and unforgiving wilderness. The third principle transforms the silent desert into a chorus of guidance. We now enter the world of sonic waypoints, where sound itself became the most reliable compass. Among the star charts and resonant maps, archaeologists uncovered collections of strange artifacts. There were carefully shaped crystalline stones, clear as quartz, and long, hollow tubes made from a clay hardened by the desert sun. At first, they were catalogued as ritual objects or primitive musical instruments, but their true purpose was far more practical. Laboratory tests revealed that when struck or blown, each object emitted a single, incredibly pure tone. These were not for making music, they were precision tools. The field of archaeoacoustics, the study of ancient sound, then made a critical discovery. These specific frequencies, once thought to be weak and fleeting, can travel for immense distances across flat, open desert. Unlike a human voice that fades and scatters, these pure tones cut through the air, resisting distortion over miles of empty space. This led to a revolutionary theory. Imagine a network of these sonic markers planted along a prehistoric trade route. Each waypoint, perhaps a stone set on a high rock or a clay tube mounted in a specific orientation, was a unique beacon. A traveler would not simply wander and hope. They would use a small, personal resonator to send out a pulse, a single clear note. Then they would listen. From the vast emptiness, a faint but distinct echo would return. That returning sound was not a random echo from a dune. It was the specific, pure frequency of the next waypoint in the chain. By gauging the direction of the returning sound and its strength, a navigator could triangulate their position and plot a course to the next beacon. They could literally hear their way forward. This created an invisible highway, an auditory path etched into the very air. Visual landmarks are useless in a sandstorm or the moonless dark of a desert night. But sound penetrates the blinding dust and the deepest darkness. This system was the prehistoric equivalent of a global positioning signal, a network of acoustic satellites guiding every step. It meant that even in the most disorienting conditions, a traveler was never truly lost. The next note in the sequence was always out there, waiting to be heard, pulling them safely onward through the emptiness. This Trans-Saharan audio-visual corridor presents a stunning vision of prehistoric logistics. Think of it not as a single dirt track, but as a fully integrated guidance system spanning thousands of miles. Recent analysis, cross-referencing the archive data with satellite surveys, has mapped out a complete network of these stations. They were not placed randomly. Each one was positioned approximately a 3-day camel journey from the next, a deliberate spacing that perfectly matched the limits of human and animal endurance in that brutal heat. Every station was a chapter in a much larger guidebook. When a caravan arrived, the real work began. Inside the cool, dark chamber, the navigator would first consult the celestial markers. By observing where a beam of sunlight fell on a specific grid, they could confirm the exact date, resetting their internal clock and confirming they were on schedule for that leg of the journey. Then they would turn to the local geomorphic maps, placing a hand on the carved stone landscape. They might use a small resonator to find the tone that made a particular valley hum, revealing the location of a hidden aquifer just a day's travel away. This was not guesswork, it was precise, location-specific intelligence. Finally, they would use the station's unique sonic tools. They would sound a specific crystal or clay tube, listening for the distinct, pure frequency that would echo back from the next waypoint beacon, often mounted high on a distant rock formation. This returning sound gave them an exact auditory bearing for the next stage of their trek. This entire process created a standardized, repeatable method for crossing an impossible landscape. You did not need to be a born desert genius. You simply needed to understand the system. It was a form of prehistoric infrastructure, a coordinated project of staggering ambition that turned a trackless void into a safe, reliable, and predictable highway. The very existence of this corridor suggests a level of intertribal cooperation and shared knowledge that rewrites our understanding of early human society. They were not just surviving the desert, they had mastered it, using a language of stone and sound to speak across the centuries. The materials themselves are a testament to an obsession with permanence. These archives were not carved on simple stone. The tablets are made from a manufactured composite, a prehistoric polymer created by mixing crushed quartz with specific, highly refined clay minerals, all bound together with a sap-based adhesive. Once fired at a deliberately low temperature, this mixture underwent a chemical transformation, becoming a ceramic slab harder than granite. This material is completely impervious to moisture, immune to the jaws of insects, and utterly resistant to the slow decay that crumbles ordinary rock. It is a synthetic stone engineered for eternity. The ink used to inscribe the star charts and resonant maps was no ordinary pigment. Analysis shows it is a sophisticated metallic compound, primarily silver and copper suspended in a glassy medium. These lines were not painted on. They were painstakingly fused into the stone's surface using a technique akin to vitrification, where intense, localized heat literally melted the metallic compounds into the ceramic, making the inscription and the tablet a single, unbreakable entity. You could not scrape these markings away without destroying the entire slab. This was a read-only memory, etched in fire and metal. The final layer of protection was architectural genius. These chambers were not dug just anywhere. They were placed with meticulous care in geologically stable zones, far from fault lines and underground water flows. Their entrances were sealed with massive, counterweighted stone doors that, when closed, created a near-perfect vacuum inside. This void of air halted all biological and chemical degradation in its tracks. No bacteria could live, no oxidation could occur. It was a time capsule in its most literal form. Every aspect, from the molecular structure of the tablets to the airless void of the rooms, points to a single driving purpose. This was not accidental preservation. It was a deliberate, engineered solution for long-term data storage, designed with a foresight that rivals our most advanced digital archives today. Their survival for 15,000 years was not luck. It was a calculated, breathtaking achievement. The physical remains of these navigators tell a story of a life dedicated to perception. In sealed chambers adjacent to the main archives, archaeologists uncovered skeletons with extraordinary adaptations. Their skulls show significantly enlarged auditory canals, a biological modification that would have granted them an almost supernatural ability to detect the faintest of sounds across vast, silent distances. Their eye sockets are structured in a way that suggests exceptional night vision, allowing them to read the subtle shifts of starlight on a moonless desert night. These people were not ordinary members of their society. They were a specialized elite, a navigator caste biologically honed for their role. The artifacts buried with them confirm this status. Each individual was interred with a personalized toolkit. There were sets of polished resonance stones, each tuned to a specific frequency, worn smooth from a lifetime of use. There were also intricate, wearable devices carved from bone and wood, primitive astrolabes that could track celestial movements with startling accuracy. These were not the possessions of wandering nomads. They were the precision instruments of a highly trained technocrat. The knowledge required to operate this vast system was not written down in any language we can read. It was a living science passed from master to apprentice through an unbroken chain of rigorous oral tradition and hands-on practice. We can almost hear the echoes of their training within those stone chambers. A young apprentice would learn to match a specific star chart to the resonant hum of a geomorphic map, then replicate the exact tone needed to locate the next sonic waypoint. This was a lifelong education, turning a select few into the librarians, engineers, and pilots of their age. Their power was absolute. By holding the secret to safe passage, they controlled the flow of trade, information, and culture across a continent. They were the indispensable guides upon whom entire economies depended. The existence of such a sophisticated, specialized profession forces us to completely rethink social organization in prehistory. Long before the rise of kings and pharaohs, human society had already cultivated a professional class of scientists whose authority came not from force, but from their irreplaceable command of a hidden technology. The vast, silent desert and the endless, rolling ocean represent two ultimate frontiers. Yet in prehistory, both were conquered by human genius using radically different strategies. Polynesian voyagers, the astronauts of their age, sailed the open Pacific by reading a living library of natural signs. They memorized the subtle patterns of swells, the specific flight paths of homing birds, and the unchanging paths of key stars. Their knowledge was portable, carried in memory, and embodied in the feel of the canoe beneath them. It was a system of profound individual mastery. The desert navigator operated in a completely different reality. Their world was one of fixed points and hidden structures. They could not read the waves or follow a bird, for the desert offered no such consistent, mobile clues. Instead, they depended on a constructed network. Their guidance came from the resonant hum of a specific stone map, the fixed frequency of a sonic beacon mounted on a distant ridge, and the annual reset of a sunbeam in an underground chamber. This was not portable knowledge, it was location-locked intelligence. This fundamental difference shaped their entire societies. The Polynesian navigator was a self-contained master, capable of launching into the void from any point, their expertise entirely within them. The desert navigator, however, was a node in a vast, interconnected system. Their power was real, but it was contingent on accessing the next archive, on hearing the next waypoint. This created a civilization built around maintained routes and centralized knowledge repositories. One system celebrated the sovereign individual, while the other necessitated a collaborative, almost institutional framework. Both were brilliant adaptations to their respective extremes of water and sand, proving that human ingenuity does not follow a single path, but blossoms in countless forms to meet the demands of an unforgiving world. This immense investment in stone and sound was born from desperation. Paleoclimatology paints a stark picture of the world these navigators faced. Around 5,000 years ago, the lush grasslands that once covered these regions began to vanish with terrifying speed. Rivers that had flowed for millennia shriveled into dusty scars on the landscape. The world they knew was literally turning to dust beneath their feet. What was once a familiar homeland was becoming a lethal, shifting maze. In this context, the archives were not a luxury or an abstract scientific pursuit. They were a direct, monumental response to an existential crisis. This was a civilization-wide survival strategy, a desperate attempt to codify a world that was disappearing before their eyes. Think of the frantic effort it would require. As the old, reliable water holes dried up, teams would have been dispatched to find new ones, mapping their location not on perishable parchment, but in resonant stone. As traditional landmarks were buried by dunes, new sonic waypoints had to be established, their pure tones becoming the only reliable markers in an increasingly featureless void. The archives became a living database, constantly updated with the hard-won knowledge of a changing planet. They ensured that the death of one elder, one master navigator, would not mean the death of the entire community's chance for survival. This knowledge was the ultimate insurance policy. By pooling their collective intelligence into these indestructible repositories, they transformed individual, fleeting experience into permanent, communal property. The archives stand as a profound monument to human resilience. They prove that when confronted with catastrophic environmental collapse, our ancestors did not simply flee or surrender. They observed, they learned, and they engineered a solution designed to outlast the very crisis that created it. They built a legacy of knowledge meant to guide their children's children through a world they knew would be forever changed. Legends whispered for generations suddenly snap into sharp, undeniable focus. Across the oral traditions of the desert peoples, there are persistent tales of singing stones that called out to lost travelers, guiding them through sandstorms with their ethereal voices. Other stories speak of star paths, luminous roads laid across the heavens by ancient gods to shepherd their people. For centuries, archaeologists and historians filed these accounts away as beautiful allegories, symbolic stories about faith and hope. The underground archives have shattered that assumption. The correlation is too precise to be coincidence. The legendary singing stones are the sonic waypoints, their pure frequencies echoing across the dunes. The mythical star paths are the celestial synchronization chambers, where beams of starlight and sunlight painted navigable routes onto stone grids. What we labeled as mythology was in fact a cultural memory of a working technology. The gods who laid down the paths were likely the master navigators themselves, their sophisticated understanding of the cosmos seeming divine to those who did not possess the keys. This realization forces a profound shift in how we interpret ancient stories. It suggests that the line between myth and history is far more porous than we ever believed. When a society loses the context for its own technology, the memory of that technology does not simply vanish. It transforms, it becomes legend. The practical tool becomes a magical artifact. The skilled engineer becomes a god. The instruction manual becomes a sacred hymn. This means we must approach other ancient myths with a new humility. The Greek story of the labyrinth, the Norse tales of the Bifrost Bridge, the Aboriginal songlines that map the continent, could these also be faded echoes of real but forgotten sciences? The archives teach us to listen to the old stories not as fairy tales, but as potential records. They are a warning that our own civilization's knowledge is fragile, and that the greatest truths we possess may one day survive only as ghost stories, waiting for someone to uncover the key that turns legend back into history. The discovery of one network immediately raises a monumental question. Was the Kemenu cache an isolated miracle, or was it just one node in a much larger web? The search for an answer has led scientists to some of the most remote and arid places on Earth. In the vast silence of the Gobi Desert, ground-penetrating radar has detected distinct, unnatural voids deep beneath the sand. Their geometric shapes and internal layouts, as far as the scans can tell, mirror the chambers we have already found. The same strange signatures appear in the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula. These are not yet excavated sites. They are ghostly echoes on a screen, but the geophysical fingerprints are a near-perfect match. This points to a terrifying and thrilling possibility. We may be looking at the scattered fragments of an intercontinental navigation system. Think about what that implies. A traveler from a settlement in what is now Mongolia could have followed a chain of these archives all the way to the heart of the Sahara. They would have moved from one station to the next, each one resetting their calendar with a beam of sunlight, each one offering a resonant stone map of the local terrain, and each one guiding them to the next sonic beacon on the horizon. This was not a collection of isolated cultures. It was a connected world. The existence of such a network demands a shared technological language. The frequency of a sonic waypoint in the go-by would have to be understood by a navigator from the Arabian Peninsula. The method for reading a star chart in one archive would have to be identical to the method used in another, thousands of miles away. This suggests a prehistoric standardization of science that we never dreamed possible. It rewrites the story of human globalization, pushing it back thousands of years before the Silk Road. The search for these sister sites is now one of archaeology's most urgent quests. Finding just one and confirming its purpose would shatter our old timelines. It would prove that our ancestors were not just surviving in their own isolated corners of the world. They were building a global infrastructure, a hidden internet of stone and sound to bind a continent together. The same principles that guided caravans across the Sahara are now charting a course for humanity's future in space. The concept of geomorphic resonance mapping, of listening to the hidden song of the landscape, is being adapted for interplanetary exploration. Probes destined for Mars and the moons of Jupiter are being equipped with advanced versions of this technology. Instead of striking a stone tablet, they will send low-frequency vibrations through the ground, listening for the resonant hum that reveals the presence of subterranean water ice, the most precious resource for any future colony. This ancient technique offers a way to map aquifers from orbit, turning a prehistoric survival skill into a key tool for finding life beyond Earth. Back on our own planet, the logic of the sonic waypoints is being resurrected to solve modern communication gaps. In dense jungles, deep canyons, and other remote areas where satellite signals are unreliable or non-existent, engineers are developing simple, low-power acoustic networks. These systems use pure, sustained tones, much like the clay tubes and crystals of the archives, to transmit data over long distances. A single, solar-powered beacon can create a communication bubble for dozens of miles, allowing for basic messaging and coordination without any need for complex infrastructure. It is a return to a fundamental, resilient form of connection, perfect for disaster relief or sustainable development in the world's most isolated communities. Perhaps the most urgent lesson lies in the very stone of the tablets themselves. In an age of digital fragility, where hard drives fail and file formats become obsolete within decades, the archive's material science is a revelation. Research teams are now studying that prehistoric polymer, that fusion of quartz and clay, to develop new data storage media. The goal is to create a modern Rosetta Stone, a disk or plaque capable of storing vast amounts of information in a physical format that is immune to water, radiation, and time, designed to last for 10,000 years or more. This is the final, stunning reversal of the story. We went looking for a forgotten past, expecting to find the primitive origins of our own technology. Instead, we found a mirror. The ancients were not simply trying to survive their world. They were engineering a future, and in solving the existential threats of their time, they inadvertently built a toolkit for our own. Their answers to desertification and lost knowledge are now becoming our answers for space exploration, resilient communication, and preserving the sum of human achievement. The underground archives were not a dead end. They were a blueprint left for us to find just when we needed it most. The system's end was as silent as its operation. No invading armies stormed the chambers, no earthquake sealed the doors. The world's most advanced navigation network simply faded from memory, not with a bang, but with a long, slow whisper. Its decline is a puzzle with no single piece to blame, but a cascade of small, interconnected failures. The climate continued its relentless shift. Deserts expanded further, swallowing entire routes and the waypoint stations that served them. A path that was viable for 1,000 years might have been buried under a mountain of sand in a single generation, rendering the carefully maintained data for that corridor utterly useless. The very landscape it was built to conquer eventually strangled it. At the same time, human societies were changing. New empires rose, their power based on control of fertile lands and written languages, not the esoteric secrets of desert navigation. The specialized navigator caste, once revered, may have found their status eroded. Their apprentices could have been drawn away by new opportunities, or a war might have disrupted the delicate master-to-student lineage. The chain of oral tradition, the living heartbeat of the system, was broken, and with that break, the technology became a mystery. A slate tablet is just a rock if you cannot hear its resonant song. A star chart is just a pattern of dots if you do not know which night of the year it represents. The knowledge became locked away in plain sight. Then came the camel. The domestication of the dromedary was a revolution in desert travel. These hardy creatures could carry their own water, traverse longer distances between oases, and offered a new kind of flexibility. Why rely on a fixed network of underground chambers when you could carry your supplies with you and follow more direct paths? The archive system, for all its brilliance, was fundamentally rigid. It was a railroad of stone and sound in an age that had just invented the all-terrain vehicle. Its greatest strength became its fatal weakness. The system was so complex, so specialized, and so integrated that it could not survive a partial collapse. It was an all-or-nothing technology. Once a critical number of stations were abandoned and a critical number of navigators died without passing on their skills, the entire edifice of knowledge became incomprehensible. The library stood full of answers, but there was no one left who knew the questions. Their silence today is a profound lesson in the fragility of knowledge. It proves that no system, no matter how advanced or well-engineered, is permanent. It only survives as long as there is a living, breathing culture to maintain it, to understand it, and to need it. When that need vanishes, even the most permanent stones eventually forget what they were built to say. Such incredible discoveries always seem to attract their own shadow of wild speculation. We hear whispers of ancient astronauts, of a technologically superior race from Atlantis, or of intervention by some mysterious, forgotten god. It is a compelling narrative, the idea that our own past is too incredible to be human. But the truth, when we look closely at the evidence, is far more grounded and in many ways even more astonishing. Every single artifact pulled from the Kemenu cache and its sister sites is made from materials found right there in the local environment. The tablets are a composite of regional quartz and clay. The resonating crystals are native stones carefully shaped. The metallic inks are smelted from local ore deposits. There are no mysterious alloys, no unidentifiable plastics, no elements that do not belong. The tools used to create these archives are the same stone drills and bone gravers found in other, more mundane prehistoric sites. This was not the work of visitors from another world. It was the work of brilliant local engineers. The real story is one of profound human ingenuity. Think of the generations of observation it required. Someone had to first notice that a specific stone hummed when the wind blew across it in a certain way. Another person had to connect that hum to a hidden water source deep below. Then, someone else had to figure out how to carve a map that replicated that resonant property. This was not a single moment of divine inspiration. It was a science built over centuries, a slow and meticulous accumulation of knowledge passed down and refined with each generation. To dismiss this as the work of aliens or a lost super-civilization is to do a deep disservice to our ancestors. It suggests that early humans were incapable of such complex thought, that they needed outside help to achieve greatness. The opposite is true. Their achievements are a testament to the raw, innovative power of the human mind when faced with existential challenges. They had no computers, no satellites, no advanced machinery. They had keen observation, relentless experimentation, and a deep, intimate conversation with their world. They solved the problem of crossing a continent with nothing but stone, sound, and starlight. That is not a mystery to be explained away by fantasy. It is a milestone in human history that deserves our respect and our awe. Their legacy is not a spaceship buried in the sand. It is the enduring proof that humanity, with patience and intelligence, can overcome any frontier. That sealed environment, a perfect vacuum untouched for thousands of years, is the very thing that kept the knowledge safe. Yet our first breath of modern air inside those chambers begins a slow, irreversible death for the artifacts we came to save. This creates a painful paradox for archaeology. Our desire to learn directly threatens the object of our study. The moment an archaeologist's boot disturbs the dust of a sealed archive, the clock starts ticking. The stable humidity, the constant temperature, the absence of oxygen, all of it is shattered. We watch in real time as colors on a mural, once vibrant, begin to oxidize and fade before our eyes. The precise molecular structure of the resonant stone tablets can be compromised by the moisture in our own breath. It is a race against our own presence. This has sparked a deep and necessary conflict within the scientific community. On one side are those who believe we must excavate now. They argue that the sands are always shifting, that these sites are vulnerable to looting or natural erosion, and that the knowledge inside is too vital to leave in the ground. Their motto is to rescue and preserve in a controlled museum environment. The other side proposes a far more cautious path. They advocate for in situ preservation, for using ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scans, and other non-invasive technologies to map and study the sites without ever breaking their seals. They believe we are temporary custodians, not owners, and that our current conservation techniques are still too primitive to them. Opening a chamber now is a form of academic vandalism, destroying a pristine time capsule for a partial understanding, when future generations with better technology could learn so much more without causing any harm. This is not a simple debate about method. It is a profound question of responsibility. Do we have the right to be the generation that unlocks these doors, knowing we might be the last to see these treasures in their original state? Our hunger for answers must be weighed against our duty to preserve the question for the future. Every time we contemplate unsealing another chamber, we are forced to ask ourselves if our curiosity is worth the potential cost of silencing these stones forever. Unlocking the secrets of the archives no longer requires a shovel and a brush alone. The modern archaeologist arrives at a site armed with a digital toolkit, a suite of non-invasive technologies that let the past speak for itself without ever being touched. High above the desert, aircraft equipped with LiDAR scanners fire millions of laser pulses at the ground. This process strips away the obscuring veil of sand and vegetation, revealing the ghostly imprint of human activity beneath. What looks like a featureless plain to our eyes becomes a detailed map of buried walls, pathways, and the faint, geometric outlines of structures waiting in the dark. Once a potential site is identified from the air, ground-penetrating radar takes over. Researchers slowly push a cart-mounted unit across the surface, sending radio waves deep into the Earth. These waves bounce back, creating a vivid, three-dimensional sonogram of the subterranean world. We can now walk across a barren stretch of desert and see, on a screen, the perfect outline of a chamber 10 meters below, its walls intact and its contents waiting. This is like having X-ray vision into the bedrock. For the artifacts we do carefully recover, multispectral imaging acts as a kind of technological miracle. A faded inscription, worn smooth by time and invisible under normal light, is photographed under specific wavelengths. Suddenly, the vanished lines of a star chart or the intricate groove of a resonant spiral flare back into view, rescued from oblivion by light we cannot even see. Perhaps the most powerful tool is the digital space where all this data converges. Using advanced 3D modeling software, researchers can take the scan of a shattered tablet and virtually reassemble it in seconds, a puzzle solved without glue or guesswork. They can then take that complete digital model and place it back into a virtual reconstruction of its original chamber. With a click, they can simulate the path of a solstice sunbeam across the floor to verify a celestial alignment, or calculate the precise acoustic frequency a stone map would produce. We are not just observing these archives anymore. We are recreating them in a virtual world, allowing us to run experiments that would be impossible or far too risky in the fragile physical site. This shift from excavation to digital preservation is the new frontier of archaeology. The story of the archives is no longer just a tale carved in stone. It is a narrative being written in laser light and data streams, a collaboration across millennia where ancient ingenuity meets modern innovation to ensure these whispers from the past are never lost again. Deciphering the archive's language is a puzzle too vast for any single field of expertise. It demands a modern-day guild of masters, each bringing a unique key to unlock a different part of the mystery. Astrophysicists run complex simulations on supercomputers, rewinding the sky to the exact configuration of stars 15,000 years ago, cross-referencing their celestial maps with the dot patterns on the tablets. Geologists take core samples from the stone tablets themselves, analyzing their mineral composition to understand why one specific blend of quartz and clay hums at a particular frequency when struck. In soundproof laboratories, acoustic engineers use laser vibrometers to measure the subtlest vibrations in replica waypoints, working to replicate the pure, carrying tones that once echoed across the dunes. This is not a series of isolated experiments. It is a constant, flowing conversation. A data scientist might develop a pattern recognition algorithm that identifies a new class of spiral in the dot arrays, a pattern that an acoustic engineer then tests for its sonic properties, which in turn a geologist links to a specific magnetic anomaly in the regional bedrock. Each discovery in one field ripples through all the others, building a collective understanding no single researcher could ever achieve alone. Linguists and cognitive scientists face perhaps the most abstract challenge. They are studying a language with no nouns or verbs, a system of information built entirely on relationships between images and sounds. They investigate how the human brain decodes these multi-sensory inputs, suggesting that the navigators were not just reading a map, but entering a state of focused perception where a star pattern and a tone fused into a single, unambiguous instruction. This collaborative modern effort perfectly mirrors the ancient system it seeks to understand. Just as the original technology fused astronomy, geology, and acoustics into one seamless guide, our quest to comprehend it requires the same synthesis of disparate fields. The archive was built on the principle that knowledge is interconnected. and we are slowly learning to think in the same way, proving that the biggest mysteries are never solved in isolation, but at the vibrant intersection of every kind of knowing. The textbooks got it wrong. For generations, the story of early humanity was one of slow, isolated struggle, of small bands fighting for survival in their own little worlds. The silent stones of the desert archives shout down that entire narrative. They prove that long before the pyramids or the great cities of Mesopotamia, human societies were capable of breathtaking complexity on an intercontinental scale. This was not a world of simple tribes. It was a world of engineers, of astronomers, of data scientists working in stone. The very existence of a standardized navigation network spanning thousands of miles means that trade and communication flowed across distances we never thought possible for that era. Think of the logistics. A single caravan journey from one end of the system to the other would have required the cooperation of dozens, perhaps hundreds, of different communities. They had to agree on the standards, the frequencies of the sonic waypoints, the design of the celestial chambers. This suggests a level of diplomacy and shared purpose that rewrites our understanding of prehistoric politics. It was a globalization of knowledge, a silent agreement that survival was a collective project. This discovery also forces us to re-evaluate who we consider the founders of civilization. Our historical spotlight has long been fixed on the river valleys, on the Egyptians and the Sumerians with their written languages and monumental architecture. But what about the people of the sand? The archives elevate the desert-dwelling cultures from the footnotes of history to its very center stage. They were not primitive nomads wandering aimlessly. They were the master architects of a hidden infrastructure, the keepers of a science so advanced it feels alien even to us. Their achievement challenges a deep-seated bias in our historical accounting, a bias that has often valued the builder of cities over the master of the open world. This is more than just adding a new chapter to the history book. It is about tearing out the old table of contents and writing a new one. It forces us to ask what other capabilities we have underestimated in our ancestors. If they could build a continent-spanning guidance system with stone and sound, what other wonders now lost to the sand were once part of our common heritage? The story of humanity is far older, far more connected, and infinitely more ingenious than we ever dared to believe. The desert at night is a cathedral of silence, a void so complete it feels like a physical weight. Dr. Aris Thorne felt that weight on his shoulders as he stood alone in the darkness, a single figure against an ocean of sand. His mission was a leap of faith across 12,000 years. He was not carrying a global positioning device or a satellite phone. His tools were a set of polished crystal resonators, a slate tablet etched with a star pattern for a sky that no longer looks the same, and a deep trust in the decoded principles of the Kemenu cache. His goal was to walk a 200-mile stretch of a dead trade route, navigating exactly as the ancients did. For the first 3 days, the only sound was the wind and the crunch of his own boots. The silence was the greatest test. Modern intuition screams to rely on sight, to search for a landmark, any landmark, but the desert offers none. It is a master of deception, where dunes shift shape hourly and mirages dance on the horizon. Aris had to force his mind to stop looking and start listening. Each evening, he would use his star chart, holding it up to the precessed heavens, identifying the guide constellations that had moved a hand's width across the sky since they were first painted in stone. He was not just following a map, he was synchronizing his internal clock with an ancient calendar. On the 4th day, he reached the location where the archives indicated the first sonic waypoint should be. He took out his primary resonator, a disc of clear quartz, and struck it once with a small mallet. A pure, high note rang out, startlingly loud in the emptiness. Then he waited, his entire being focused on the silence that followed. Seconds stretched into a minute. Had he miscalculated? Was the waypoint buried, destroyed by time? Just as doubt began to creep in, a faint, impossibly clear tone returned from the northwest. It was not an echo. It was a distinct, answering frequency, the exact pitch predicted by the resonant maps. In that moment, the abstract theory of the archives evaporated. It was no longer a hypothesis debated in a lab. It was a direct, tangible thread pulled taut across the millennia. The feeling was not one of academic triumph, but of profound humility. He was hearing the same note from the same source that had guided a caravan master 12,000 years prior. That single tone was a conversation with a ghost, a whispered secret that had waited in the stone for centuries to be heard again. The rest of his journey became a ritual of trust. He would walk toward the sound, and after a day's march, the next waypoint would answer his call, pulling him ever forward through the disorienting vastness. He learned to feel the landscape through his feet, sensing the subtle vibrations that hinted at stable ground, just as the geomorphic maps suggested. He arrived at his destination not as a modern explorer who had conquered the desert, but as a student who had been gently led through it by the hands of the past. This experiential archaeology did more than prove the system worked. It forged a deep, personal respect for the men and women who did this not as an experiment, but as their life's work. To walk in their footsteps is to understand that their greatest invention was not the sonic waypoint or the star chart, but the unshakable faith that the world, even at its most hostile, could be spoken to and that it would answer. Our understanding of these archives is still a sketch, a faint outline drawn from just a handful of opened rooms. The vast majority of this subterranean network remains untouched, their massive stone doors still sealed against the world. Behind them lies a silence filled with unimaginable potential. We have only read the first page of a library that spans a continent. The next wave of exploration will not rely on shovels alone. Scientists are preparing to deploy muon tomography, a revolutionary technique that uses cosmic rays from deep space. These subatomic particles, constantly raining down on us, can penetrate hundreds of meters of solid rock. By placing sensitive detectors around a site, researchers can essentially create a giant, natural X-ray machine. They will see the hollow chambers, the layout of corridors, and even the shapes of large artifacts inside, all without ever breaking the seal. This allows us to peek inside the tomb without robbing it of its protective darkness. At the same time, artificial intelligence is being trained on the symbols we have already decoded. The AI is not looking for grammar. It is searching for deeper patterns, for the hidden logic in the arrangement of dots and spirals that has eluded the human eye. It cross-references star charts with resonant frequencies and geological data, looking for the underlying rules of this multi-sensory language. The goal is to give us a universal translator for a world written in stone and sound. What could these unopened chambers possibly contain? One might hold a geomorphic map of an entire continent we never knew they explored, a resonant landscape of South America or Asia carved in stunning detail. Another might be a dedicated record of a catastrophic celestial event, like a supernova that lit up the prehistoric sky, its date and position recorded with pinpoint accuracy. We might even find the master archive, the central repository that explains the origin and purpose of the entire system. The most thrilling possibility is that we have not yet found the most advanced technology they possessed. The greatest discoveries about our own past, the truths that will once again rewrite every textbook, are not lost. They are simply waiting, patient in the deep earth, for the right moment to speak. The silent stones of the archives ask a question that echoes far beyond the desert. What does it mean for an entire world of knowledge to simply vanish? This was not a lost recipe or a forgotten legend, but a complete operating system for survival, a technology that guided a civilization for millennia, and then it was gone. Its disappearance forces us to confront a humbling truth about the impermanence of human achievement. Our greatest works, our most brilliant innovations, are not permanent monuments. They are whispers in a storm, easily silenced by the slow, relentless passage of time. Our own civilization, with its cloud servers and global networks, feels unshakably solid. We imagine our data will last forever, but the archives are a stark reminder that every civilization is a temporary chapter. They too must have felt their system was eternal, carved as it was in indestructible stone. Yet it fell into a silence so complete we did not even know to listen for it. This is the profound fragility of our collective memory. We stand on a precipice, looking back at a void where a library once stood, and we are forced to wonder what essential parts of our own world will one day be empty spaces in the story told about us. Yet within this sobering reality lies a second, more hopeful truth. The very fact that we found these archives, that we are piecing together their meaning, speaks to something enduring in the human spirit. It is not the specific technology that is permanent, but the underlying drive. The same relentless curiosity that compelled an ancient engineer to map a hidden aquifer with sound is the same force that pushes our scientists to map the human genome or the surface of Mars. We are connected to those ancient librarians across 12,000 years by a shared, unquenchable thirst to understand our world, to conquer distance, and to leave a mark that says, "We were here." The archives are a mirror, and when we gaze into their polished stone, we do not see primitive ancestors. We see ourselves. We see our own ambitions, our own fears of being forgotten, and our own desperate hope that our knowledge will somehow outlive us. Their story tells us that while our tools may turn to dust, the quest for understanding is the true human legacy, a flame passed from hand to hand through the centuries, never allowing the darkness to completely win. The underground archives are far more than an archaeological wonder. They are a testament to the boundless ingenuity of the human spirit. Our journey began with a drill bit dropping into a void, an accidental puncture that revealed a library of stone. We have walked through the decoding of their celestial language, where dots on a slate became a map of the ancient sky. We felt the revelation of geomorphic resonance, learning how a stone could sing the secrets of hidden water. And we listened to the logic of sonic waypoints, an invisible highway of pure sound guiding travelers through the blinding dust. These discoveries ripple outward, forcing us to rewrite our history books and rethink our own technological future. The silent stone libraries hold a mirror to our own civilization, challenging our assumptions about progress and permanence. They remind us that the past is not a simple, linear path from primitive to advanced. It is a complex tapestry woven with threads of sophisticated knowledge that can be lost for millennia, only to be found again when we are ready to understand. Let this incredible story be a call to look at all the mysteries of our world with fresh eyes and an open mind. What other secrets are waiting just beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right key to turn legend back into history? We would love to hear your thoughts on these incredible discoveries in the comments below, and if you want to continue this journey into the unknown with us, please subscribe.